Good to everyone. This week's parsha we'll be learning about Sarah when Sarah passed away. A very interesting note that the word Olah, her tent, that when Yitzhak brings his newly betrothed, which is Rivka, to the tent, to his mother's tent, it says Olah to his mother's tent, and that the Balatorim tells us that it's said basically 8 times in the whole Torah. It's repeated or referred to. One, the Olah, her tent or the tent, is related to the Mishkan itself, the tabernacle in the desert. 2, it's also it's repeated in terms of the place where it was later on in Gilgal in Israel, Gilgal. Then afterwards, it's in Shiloh, also in Israel. And then it's moved to Nov, and then after that, Gibon, and then later on to do Jerusalem, which is in the Beit Mikdash Rishon, the first Beit Mikdash, and Beit Mikdash Sheni, the second Beit Mikdash. And then, of course, will be the Tidlavo. Tidlavo means in the future. And Hashem will send the Mashiach, and we'll have the rebuilding of the Beit Mikdash be the third Beit Mikdash. So keep that in mind, the 8 references to the word Olah, the word tent. Now, we see something very interesting that after Sarah Meno, our mother Sarah, passed away, 3 wonderful and amazing characteristics or happenings, occurrences, phenomena of the tent also stopped. While Sarah was alive, the candle she lit from Friday evening, from Shabbat Eve until the following Shabbat, from Shabbat to Shabbat, constantly was lit, was always a flame. The light was always there. Next was a bracha in the dough, in the dough itself, the bracha itself, that was given whereby where one would eat the dough, it would be, so to speak, increase in satiation in order to give one a complete satisfaction within the dough itself. Third was the anei kavod, so to speak, the clouds that were above the tent, and the Shekhinah, divine presence, was on top of the tent itself. So the question is, what was the thing, what was the act that merited Sarah to have these wonderful, incredible miracles? That was from week to week. So Sifei Chamim, a great commentator, says the reason why, because Sarah, was makbid, was very strict when it came to Nida. Nida means the family purity rules, the laws of separation from husband and wife during the monthly cycle, and what a wife would do during the 5 days of the cycle, and then the 7 days to count to make sure that there's no cycle, and then afterwards to prepare herself to go to mikvah, the ritual immersion whereby she'd be renewed, reborn, and then she and her husband could renew their physical life together. So Sarah was very, very makbid in this. So several questions arise. First of all, we know that Sarah herself was born without a womb. So the question, did she have a cycle? It seems that she did have a cycle, because on this week's parsha, or last week's parsha, when the angels come to visit Avraham Avinu, all of a sudden her cycle restarted again, and she was 90 years old. That was one of the 89 years old, and that was one of the miracles whereby she was rejuvenated again in order to have a child. So she probably had the cycle of her life, even though she was born without a womb. Either way, she was very, very strict when it came to family purity. Now, it brings down in the Mishnah, when a woman gives childbirth, which is in childbirth, and so to speak, it's similar, so to speak, when a man goes to war, it's a time of danger. And when the time of danger occurs, then the books in the Shemaim, the books in heaven, are open. And the heavenly court looks at the person and sees if they are worthy of being protected by Hashem. So what happens is that we see that there are 3 times whereby, or 3 occurrences that can cause a woman in childbirth to be judged. 1, if she was or was not strict when it came to Nida, again, the family purity laws. 2, when she did challah. Challah is separating the portion of the dough that should be given to the Kohen, the priest, any priest, Jewish priest. That means, as we know, there are two categories within Jewish people. There's Kohen, Levi, and Yisrael, the priests who come from the family of Aaron, then the tribe of Levi, and then Yisrael, which is the majority of the Jewish people. Basically, they come from the tribe of Judah and Benjamin. Any other remaining tribes that we still have from the 10 lost tribes, anyone descendant that usually is from the tribe of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin. So what occurs is that the second part, as we mentioned, that she has to be strict and careful with that portion. And later on, not into this tonight, but we'll go later on another video about how separation challah is made. The next part is Lakat Nerot, where she is makbid and lights the candles once a week. Now, what was these three things that have to do that's so vital, whereby Sarah, by doing these things, especially when it comes to being nida, that she was so makbid, so strict when it comes to family purity, that she was able to be zoicha. Zoicha means privileged to have these three phenomena in her tent. So we learn that Chava, Eve, was responsible to extinguish the light of life, for the Geniza, the light of life, or the holy light in the world, by bringing death into the world by eating the fruit of the tree of knowledge and good and the knowledge of good and evil, and then later causing her husband to eat from the fruit. Now, of course, the husband could have said no to her, but still, she influenced him to eat it. So what happened then, after that incident, things radically changed. Death was brought into the world. The spiritual light was reduced. The bracha, the blessing within food and so forth was reduced. And now we have man to work for his bread, and there's thistles and the thorns in nature, and things had radically changed. And also in terms of and Hashem kicked us out, threw us out, expelled us from the Garden of Eden. So we're no longer in the presence of the Shekhinah, the divine presence. Sarah Maynor, all her life, was a woman who was extremely kind, but also very firm in making sure that she was going to bring the light of Hashem, the Torah, into the world. And so that's why she was so strict to make sure that when Yitzhak was born, that she would raise this perfect, wonderful, beautiful child who was totally engrossed in holiness. And so we see that Sarah, by being strict when it comes to family purity laws, was making a holy family, a holy home. So that's we see the first part, holiness. Second part, the idea of bread, the idea of separation of bread, giving to Kohen, also teaches the concept of gratitude to Hashem, that Hashem gives you everything, and you want to show it by giving it to the representative of Hashem on earth. And who's the representative of Hashem on earth? The Kohen, the priest. Thirdly, is by having in terms of the lights lit from week to week, the lights represent not only honoring Shabbat, but also bringing Shalom Bayit to the house, bringing peace to the house. A very practical reason. If there's light in the house, people won't trip, people won't be injured, there'll be no arguments on Friday night, Shabbat night. So here you see an amazing woman who's constantly working on making a holy home. That being the case, so it perfectly makes sense that the Shekhinah, the divine presence, Hashem's presence, want to live in such a home. Especially we know that when there's peace between husband and wife, the Shekhinah Shoreba, the whole divine presence resides there. Now, case and note that when Avraham Avinu was eulogizing his wife when she passed away, he said in a beautiful eulogy. But that eulogy, do we know of that eulogy? Is it written anywhere? Lo and behold, if you look at the Midrashim, you'll see that eulogy that Avraham Avinu said for his wife is something that was compiled by Shlomo Melech, by King Solomon, based on the eulogy Avraham Avinu gave to his wife. Now, that compilation that Shlomo Melech wrote is the famous Eshet Chayil, which we say every single week. Eshet Chayil Mitzah, woman of valor, who will find. So Avraham Avinu, when he was eulogizing his wife on that terrible day when she passed away, wasn't that the same day because she it was a few days until he was able to arrange and everything for the funeral until he came back from Bershev, from Har Moriah, and he came to Hebron to eulogize his wife. And the day of the funeral, he says, "Who is this beautiful woman?" First of all, he was complimenting her incredible physical beauty. The Sarah Menu was one of the most beautiful women in history. He wasn't just complimenting her beautiful appearance. He was complimenting how she was able to use that appearance, not for herself, but to show other women in the world and men in the world that one should not be egotistical and one should not use beauty for one's sake. And when people saw that she was using her beauty for Hashem, for people to understand that there's a creator in the world, and there's Torah in the world, and we should do good and not be selfish and not use our gifts for our own egos and so forth, they were amazed. And case in point, we know many people who are very famous Hollywood actresses or actors, and they use their physical beauty to make money for their own aggrandizement, for their own particular benefits and so forth. And yet they don't use it to bring people towards Hashem. And yet Sarah showed that one who's beautiful should attract people. And with that attraction, we talk about the Creator and so forth. Next, she was someone who, as the Pasuk said, as it says in the verse, Pasuk means verse, she was able to bestow good to her husband. When her husband came down to Egypt with her, she was hidden in the box, and he asked her, "Please do not tell anyone that you're in the box and so forth, and please protect me." And she did, and because of that, she was able to receive later on in the story, when they were in Egypt, many material goods that later on was given over to the children of Israel. As also, it says that she had told her husband to go and buy a field, as it says again in Eshet Chal, a woman of valor is a woman who buys a field and grows that field. Well, that field that we say in Eshet Chal is corresponding to when she told Avinu that she wanted Abraham, to buy the field of the Machpelah, the special cave in the field of Ephron, which he did, because she knew via prophecy that was the cave whereby Adam and Eve were laid to rest. Most fitting, because she was the first woman since Chava to rectify the sin of Chava. So she brought life back into the world. So she was basically the second Chava, second Eve. So we see again this amazing woman, our mother Sarah. So case in point is then when Rivka comes to the tent of Yitzchak's mother with Sarah, all of a sudden, these three phenomena mentioned before, the light that was lit for the eternal light, so to speak, from Shabbos to Shabbos, which had stopped after Sarah passed away, again, rekindled, relit, and came from nowhere. It came to light again. 2, there was a bracha in the Isa, there was a blessing within the bread itself. 3, again, the Shekhinah resided itself. The divine presence resided. So the question is, how can a 3-year-old girl merit such an amazing and incredible type of phenomena? Now, she was betrothed at 3, but she did not marry her husband until she became of age. So there was no, of course, marriage and no physical relationship between she and Isaac until she became of age. But at 3 years old, this girl has amazing privileges, amazing merits. Again, how is it possible? So we understand some very interesting insight from the Ramban, Nachmanides, who tells us after Hashem created the world, he created the world whereby it was ex nihilo, from nothing, but then afterwards Hashem never created anything again. What Hashem does, he takes what there is and he blesses it. He amplifies it. Example, when Elisha the prophet had to bring or to fill the jugs of oil for a woman who was in distress, there was oil inside that jug, and then she was blessed, and more oil came from that jug of oil to fill all other jugs of oil. empty jugs of oil. Now they were filled with oil. So the bracha concept is whereby things are doubled, tripled, quadrupled, and so forth. And if you look at the word bracha, barech, to bless, it's bet, resh, chaf. And bet is the second letter of the alphabet, which has the miracle number of 2. Resh has the miracle number of 200, and chaf has the number of 20. But the number before that, before it comes a bet, is an aleph. Before the resh comes a kuf. Before the chaf comes a yud. So if you take 1 times 2, you get 2. If you have 100 times 2, you get 200. And if you have 10 times 2, you get 20. So these 3 letters, bet, resh, chaf, are called otiyot fulot, double multiplied numbers, whereby in the Hebrew alphabet, they're unique, whereby they doubled the number that preceded them. And that's the concept of bracha. It increases, it doubles. So one of the incredible ability of Sarah was she was able to take things and to, with her merits, to double, to increase, to multiply them. And how? Because Hashem rewarded her by blessing her food, by blessing what she did. That has to do also with Rivka. Rebecca. What did Rebecca have that was unique about her? She was 3 years old, and we see that when she met Eliezer, the servant of Abraham, she was so kind to him and to the camels and so forth. She increased in everything she did. She didn't just give one type of kindness. She multiplied her kindness and another act of kindness, another act of kindness. It's not the way only that she did it, but how she did it, with happiness, with a smile, with a cheerful attitude, and so forth. So that presence, or that act, or those acts of kindness, were how Hashem treated her, because Hashem treats you the way you treat others. So since she treated other people with such kindness, Hashem always blessed her doubly and triply and so forth. It's the same thing with Sarah Imenu. But morally, interesting to note, where did Rivka come from? She came from a wicked place, a place of idolatry, but more so, her father Betuel, as it says in Midrash Mamloez, was not a nice person at all. He was a person who was the governor of the liege of the area, and he would do something that we know that the Romans used to do centuries later, whereby the governor of an area, the Roman governor, and later on the British did the same thing as well, when they were conquerors, they would always take the virgin bride before the husband did. And that was the type of man Betuel was, did terrible things. So here is Rivka, who was able, first of all, to display tremendous kindness, and yet to maintain her own chastity. Now, you'd say, what about a 3-year-old girl? What can she be responsible for? She was not an ordinary 3-year-old girl. She was a genius. Many times we've seen prodigies. You can see prodigies on YouTube who do amazing feats in mathematics and physics. You can Google on YouTube. You can see yourself. Do a search. They are not, so to speak, the average child, and neither was Rebecca. She was quite a brilliant woman. So she could have said to her, brilliant girl, she quite should have said and used the halacha saying, well, she's less than 12 years old, so therefore she's not at all obligated by the mitzvahs, therefore she can engage in such illicit things, and she would not be punished, so forth. She did not use, again, any type of license for immorality. That's come, the verse goes out of its way and says, no man knew her. She says she was a virgin, says, and also no man knew her. So what does that mean? She was a virgin from every point of view, and any type of possibility that a man can be with a woman. That is so vital to teach us that Rivka was this amazing person who kept chastity. So then what it goes back to clearly again to what Sarah Imenu also had, the ability to be chaste, to have this family purity. So we see 2 people Sarah and Rivka, very kind, very chaste, very moral, brilliant. And another aspect, both had challenges. Sarah had a challenge whereby she had Hagar, her maidservant, become a surrogate mother. And then she saw that she was not being a very holy woman, Hagar, and mistreating Yitzchak, her son, Sarah's son, by the way she was brainwashing or putting ideas into Ishmael. And Ishmael was the son of Hagar, and how Ishmael was treating Yitzchak. So Sarah had to push out Hagar. But that is a test whereby a woman is protecting her child by pushing another woman out of the area of conflict. Rivka's test was even worse, meaning what? She had two children from her very womb, Esav and Yaakov. Esav, unfortunately, became a very wicked man, and Yaakov, Jacob, was a very great man. She had to make the choice later on, years later, when both of them were 63 years old. Who's both of them? Esav and Yaakov. They're both 63 years old because they're both fraternal twins. And now had to be the time when Yitzchak, her husband, was going to give the blessing, the famous Abrahamic blessings, the blessings whereby Abraham gave it to Yitzchak, and then Yitzchak was going to give it on to the next chosen patriarch, a leader of the Jewish people. And she knew very well that, unfortunately, Esav would not use it for good, but use it for evil. So here, Rivka's test was greater, whereby she had to put aside her own son from her womb that she had, of course, Esav, in order to choose the right leader for the Jewish people. So again, it shows strength of character. This all again comes back to the concept of the phenomena that was in the tent of Sarah, the light from week to week, the idea of blessing of the bread, and also the heavenly clouds and the Shekhinah there. This is whereby Hashem is able to live inside our world, because the light of week to week is also relevant and corresponds to when the Kohen Gadol would light the candle in the Beit Mikdash. He would light it at night, and if it would to remain for the following night, 24 hours, it showed that Hashem was happy with the Jewish people, that the Jewish people were holy, and that we were working together, the Jewish people as a family, without conflict. And again, it shows that the Shekhinah dwells where there is love between the Jewish people, where there's a connection between us and Hashem, where we are kind to each other, we bring light to the world, and by our kindness, the blessings are bestowed to the world, and whereby we are being holy and chaste, and whereby we have something extraordinary. So again, how does that relate to? Relates to the idea of the eight. Mentioned before in the beginning of the video, we were talking about there are 8 times mentioned about the tent meaning where the Shekhinah resided. One was in the Mishkan, the tabernacle in the desert. Then it was in Gilgal, in the land of Israel. Then it was in Shiloh. Then Nov, Gibon, then Jerusalem. The first Beit Mikdash, second Beit Mikdash, and eventually the third Beit Mikdash Mashiach will be sent to us, will be revealed to us. Messiah will be revealed to us. So as it says 8, now why is 8? Hanukkah is 8 also. And Chayei is before the month of Kislev. The idea of 8 is meaning above nature. And as my fellow Chavruta study partner Gidon mentioned and pointed out, there's 8 in terms also of Brit Milah. 8 means above nature. And when a person to be above nature is a person who gives everything he can. As my Rosh Hashiva Rab Dov Feinstein used to say, you have to give it your all to be above it all. And that is how we have to understand our mission in this world. If we want to bring the light of Hashem to the world, if we want to recognize Hashem as our creator, as our king, if we want to have this amazing contact whereby Hashem will reside in this world, then we have to be above it all by giving it all. Hashem, this Shekhinah, will not reside in this world unless we work to our full capacity in kindness, in chastity, in holiness, in goodness, in happiness, in bringing the light of Torah by learning it, by guarding it, by doing it, by doing the mitzvot, the commandments, the 248 positive commandments, and the 365 low commandments. Low means the negative commandments. What's a negative commandment? A negative commandment is saying you should not do this, you should not do that, do not steal, do not eat non-kosher food, and so forth. So by doing that, we have 613 commandments. That brings the light of Hashem to the world. And by doing Masim Tovim, good deeds in thought, in speech, in action, character. We are amazingly blessed to be human beings and to have those who are Jewish to have an amazing mission to the world. And that is to connect to the Creator, the King of the world, and to bring His light to the world. So in the merit of Sarah Menu, the merit of my Holy Mother, who taught me what it is to have a Jewish home, and taught me what it is to bring what is the influence of the Jewish woman in the home. May all the Jewish women around the world know that their great task is to bring the Shekhinah, divine presence, to the world, divine presence to reside in the world, and dedicate this to all the Jewish wives and the Jewish mothers around the world. And I get it to my wife, Maya Shadchal. Shavua Tov to all.